It was 70 years ago that I crash-landed on the tiny moon of the third planet of this solar system. The instruments on my spacecraft malfunctioned and I crashed to the moon's cratered surface.
Bracing for impact?
My computer logs indicated that I had crashed due to an intense electromagnetic pulse. This was generated by a nuclear bomb detonating on the planet below. Dangerous radiation was released into space and I was caught in its path. The year was 1945. I expected that, like countless other galactic civilizations, inhabitants of planet Earth would not be able to survive the splitting of the atom. I asked Miri, my ship's computer, to do some research on the planet below. Oh, don't be confused. Miri is not just a computer. It is an artificial intelligence and a friend.
Greetings!
Miri found out that the dominant natives capable of utilizing science and technology were called humans, a two-legged race descended from another four-legged one. I directed Miri to monitor the airwaves and keep me posted with the latest happenings from the planet's surface. Not only because I had time on my hands, but also because I was hoping to forget my painful past. War and pestilence had ravaged my home planet of Mars. I was trying to escape it by going to a cousin on Venus. In 1947, 2 years after my crash, Miri received a transmission from Earth. A resounding voice jolted me out of my dull routine.
This is All India Radio, Lele, radiating on all transmitters.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now...
I was wrong. The humans below did not wipe each other out, despite the Second World War. I realized that there was more to Earth than what met the eye.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That was, of course, an astronaut from a country called the USA landing on the moon. I had to run and hide when Americans Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin visited my crash site in 1969. I felt Earthlings were not ready for the first contact with a superior intelligence. Earlier in 1957, I had seen Sputnik propel mankind into outer space. It surprised me that humans offered the honor of exploring space first, not to their own kind, but to a canine, a dog. What really excited me was to observe a newly independent nation express its desire to step into space. The same nation whose broadcast had earlier caught my attention. India was not rich, it was not a superpower, and it was not even fully developed when compared to other countries which were foraying into outer space.
ऊपर से भारत कैसा दिखता है आपको?
मैं बगैर किसी झिझक के कह सकता हूँ कि सारे जहां से अच्छा दिखता है।
You just heard an exchange saved in my ship's data bank. It was the April of 1984. I sat in my damaged spacecraft with a barely functional life support system. A young cosmonaut from an ancient country called India caught my attention. I had seen many humans exercising in space, but this enthusiastic Indian cosmonaut did a form of exercise I felt was somehow different. Miri Do you remember what he was doing?
Scanning old records, the voice of Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian in space.
I was the only guy who was doing yoga in space. The physical training program which the Russian cosmonauts were undertaking in preparation of the flight, and instead of doing that regimen, I started doing yoga. So I prepared for the space flight using yogic techniques, and even during the flight, while they carried on with the exercises as prescribed for them as per their system, I carried on doing yoga in space.
Yoga in zero gravity?
See, it was the very first time that we were carrying out these asanas, so there was a pretty elaborate harness system and pulleys with loaded elastic bands which would provide the resistance against which I was exerting. So in order to try and replicate the same kind of situation and the condition available on Earth.
How interesting. Seems human scientific advancements owe a lot to committed men and women, and the basic human urge to foray into uncharted territories, to explore what lies beyond that mountain, that lake, that sea, and that forest. Since humanity had mapped most of this planet, India too turned its eyes to heavens. But was this driven by curiosity or by greed?
Checking. Curiosity confirmed. Replicating the words of Vikram Sarabhai, the founding father of the Indian space program. Quote,
"There are some who question the relevance of space activities in a developing nation. To us, there is no ambiguity of purpose. We do not have the fantasy of competing with the economically advanced nations in the exploration of the moon or the planets or manned space flight. But we are convinced that if we are to play a meaningful role nationally and in the community of nations, we must be second to none in the application of advanced technologies to the real problems of man and society."
Unquote.
Enabling space technology to percolate down to the masses. Sarabhai's vision resonates in what the Indian Space Research Organization, that is ISRO, has striven to achieve.
Searching for A.S. Kiran Kumar, Chairman ISRO.
The India space program is the only space program in the world which started with the civilian applications in mind. Vikram Sarabhai foresaw that a new technology like this can be put to the benefit of the country. The space program has touched the lives of our countrymen in more than one way. So actually with the Indian space program, our ability to make sure that we have minimum loss of life during any cyclonic event has been established. Similarly, the space program enabled India to have television being received in all the houses in the country. To start with, the broadcasting services in terms of the telecom connectivity. It was through the satellite that we were able to establish a large telephone connectivity to the entire country. And then similarly the SATCOM services, and today direct to home television which people are receiving. All these come from the satellite. For the fishermen from 1999 onwards, based on the information collected from the satellite, there is a service which tells where the fishermen should go for their fishing. This act alone saves the country to the tune of 10,000 to 20,000 crores a year. Then similarly we make use of this for weather related, for monitoring the disasters, then for also providing crop information to the government, and then urban development. One of the things that happened during the course of mid 80s and 90s is even where the bore wells need to be drilled for getting water from the bore wells. So like this, the space technology has been providing to our countrymen a set of information which is useful in their day-to-day life.
Space research as a utilitarian quest to enhance the quality of life on Earth makes sense, but something deep down still troubled me. Would human curiosity to know more be overshadowed by a desire to dominate others? Would these advanced technologies be used for narrow, selfish, political ends?
Verifying. Result negative. Here is voice of Rakesh Sharma.
Because this is the very first time that mankind is leaving the confines of the earth with the intention to colonize its neighborhood. I really nurture the hope that we don't end up exporting conflict to other planets which we shall be visiting in future. None of the paradigms which define us here on Earth, whether it be the borders, whether it be the way we have divided ourselves culturally or by language and religion, none of this should mar our presence in space. And this is my fond hope. We Indians who now do occupy a position at the high table of space exploration due to our recent successes, I'm sure we would be having a voice in hammering out policy for the future.
I smiled at these words. They made me realize I was wrong about the inhabitants of this planet. I could only imagine what the young ones of Earth thought about exploring space.
I think they're cool.
Cool? Why?
Because they bring information in space. Maybe there's aliens, new planets, new galaxies that we haven't discovered.
It seems this kid somehow knows I exist. No wonder the march for progress continued. For Indian scientists, even sky was not the limit. India launched Chandrayaan mission to the moon in 2008 and the Mangalyaan mission to Mars in 2013. Miri, how are the ISRO's efforts different from other space agencies?
Locating Biman Basu, respected science communicator.
India's INSAT-1 series was the first multi-purpose satellite in the world. Recently, till now we have been using GPS system. It is being run by the United States. India is developing its own GPS system. It's called Indian National Navigation Satellite System. Indian system uses only 7 satellites and at geostationary orbit, that is at 36,000 kilometers. Low altitude satellites, they have very limited life, 6-7 years. Indian satellites which are being placed at 36,000 kilometers will last for at least 12 to 14 years. That is one advantage. Second is, because they are geostationary, they will never be below horizon. So you can access the data from them anytime. So that way, you see, Indian space scientists have evolved everything of their own. They have not depended on any other country, or they have not copied or followed any other country. And Chandrayaan was the first satellite sent to moon to detect water conclusively.
I never thought of this. Miri, find a human female in India and find her opinion on the space program.
You know what, I'm using mobile phone, which is very helpful nowadays to stay connected with each other, which is a result of this satellite, and it is possible due to the space programs. So, chak de fatte ISRO.
Miri, what does the leader of the country think about its space program?
India has successfully reached Mars. पहले प्रयास में सफल होने वाला हिंदुस्तान के वैज्ञानिक ये सफलता प्राप्त कर रहे हैं. I congratulate all ISRO scientists on this historic occasion. और मैंने पहले ही कहा कि अमेरिका की हॉलीवुड जो फिल्म बनती है उससे भी कम खर्चे में हमारे वैज्ञानिकों ने काम किया है. यानी कितनी बारीकी से इंडिजीनियस चीजों को जोड़ करके इतना बड़ा मिशन पार किया गया है. These are all accomplishments that will go down as landmarks in history.
I'm curious, what does a common man think about space exploration?
After Mangalyaan success, I just wanted to have a look into the history of ISRO. I found that ISRO had started at a bishop's house in Kerala, and due to the lack of resources, ISRO started using bullock carts to ferry the satellite components around. Now to see that ISRO has put the Mangalyaan in Mars orbit in the maiden attempt, I'm thrilled to see that the growth of ISRO has become synonymous with the growth of the country.
The transition from a bullock cart in Kerala to the factories in Ahmedabad represent India's giant leap forward.
अहमदाबाद में 1 किलोमीटर ऑटो रिक्शा में जाना है तो 10 रुपया लगता है. हमें मार्स पर पहुंचने में सिर्फ 7 रुपया लगा 1 किलोमीटर.
I have been stranded on the moon for far too long. If I hire an auto from moon to Mars, will it charge ₹7 per kilometer to take me home? I miss my home, my family, and food. Only another space traveler can understand how boring space can become.
Food for thought, thought for food.
As regards the diet, the popular misconception is that we live with pills, etc. Actually, it's the regular food. You don't want to shock the system into something it's not used to. We could choose from 80 odd dishes which were available on board. All of them were packaged either in plastic or tins. For example, say rice, pre-cooked and in a manner that you could carve it out with a spoon so that the grains don't fly about in zero gravity. So it goes straight from the tin to the spoon to your mouth. And similarly with liquids, they're in plastic pouches and you put the spout in your mouth and then you squeeze it and that's how you drink. So there were juices and then there were meat dishes and dried fruit and, well, like I said, there was quite a spread. One of the experiments was sponsored by the Defense Food Research Laboratory in our country, and they had come up with some mango bars, and it was pretty popular with the other members of the crew, the Russians.
Even with the Russians? Oh, thinking of Russians, I would like to know about the strategic dimensions of India's space program.
Connecting with Group Captain Ajey Lele of the Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis.
Today, India's dependence on satellite technology for strategic purposes is twofold. One for the communication purposes, and other, India is developing its own navigational system. This system is also allowing India to slightly go beyond the conventional globally acceptable navigation system called GPS. India has various problems in connection with its internal security, issues like Naxalism, and we got a lot of border problems in northeast and northern parts of the country too. Satellite technology offers you to bring in a lot amount of a transparency into the business, because you are telling not only to yourself but to the outside world also based on hard data. So from that perspective, one can say that India is not only using a technology for the military purposes but also to create an international image about how India is handling various conflicts. Indian space program came under cloud essentially because of India's nuclear policies. After India did Pokhran 1 and Pokhran 2, the world looked at India's entire technological program slightly differently. The so-called technological apartheid came into being. India was put under severe sanctions.
I wonder, were these sanctions a boon or a bane?
In fact, sanctions have actually helped India because Indian scientific community took that as a challenge, and the indigenous development of a space program started happening essentially because no technology was being bartered with India from outside. And India's space community had really worked overtime, and they have taken all the efforts to ensure that India develops the required technology, be it sensors, be it satellites, be it radars, be it ground developments and ground equipments, or be it launching technology too.
Earth has something called the internet. Since I was stuck here for so long, I tried downloading some books to pass my time. I always loved reading back home. I am curious to know whether science fiction influences science. Miri?
Voice of Jayant Narlikar, renowned astrophysicist and science fiction writer.
We know of Arthur Clarke as a science fiction writer. He once wrote an article based on his experience of science fiction, I am sure, in which he showed that if you have a satellite at a specified height above the equator, it will go around the Earth with the same speed as the Earth itself spins. That is 24 hours. It makes one round, in which it remains overhead for any point on the Earth. So, such a satellite can be used for communication purposes. That was the idea he had proposed, and that is what we are today using in all our IT technologies.
I'd like to know the link between space research and Indian science fiction, if any.
Well, space research in India or abroad has been superficially depicted in many of our Indian science fiction because the close relationship I have not yet seen, where you see some crucial thing happening because of a space phenomenon or
space event. So I would say that such examples are very rare.
I know going to space requires money. Miri tells me not all humans regard space exploration as their first priority. Why do human nations explore space?
You see, every nation is a prisoner of their own nationalism.
Professor Amit Bhaduri, distinguished economist.
65,000 crores is what roughly we spend on space program. India gives large corporations, only a handful of about 18 large corporations, a total tax break of the same order. 62 is tax exemption given to corporations in terms of taxes. 1. And it is going to go up. 2. 75,000 crores, much more, is given as incentives to corporations in terms of customs duty, so on and so forth. Now, you have to prove to me that these tax breaks have improved India's investment climate so much that it is worth it compared to the space program. The space program is very largely not a waste of money, I would not say that. It would be much better if much of this money could be spent, for example, on drinking water, piped drinking water. The technology is known, cost is much, much less. But you give tax break to the corporations and you give space program and you don't give drinking water in any case to the villages, saying that there is not enough money.
Is the space program a worthwhile investment? Miri, scan for other opinions.
Biman Basu adds,
India became the first country in the world to successfully orbit a spacecraft around Mars in the first attempt. At a cost, a fraction of the cost of a similar American mission. Now, these are great achievements by a country which has developed its technology of its own without depending on any other country. Now, if countrymen are not proud of this and they only bother about how much money we have spent, I think that is very unfair and unfortunate. Because we should look at the benefit that we have already accrued and the prestige that the country, because last week we launched 5 British satellites. They didn't go to Russia. They didn't go to United States. They have come to India. Why? We have dependable rockets which can give the proper service. So these are, I think, more significant than what amount is spent, because we spend money on so many other things which don't produce any result or benefit.
Space missions might be in humanity's interest, but when I left Mars, my planet was facing natural disasters. How would space exploration impact the fragile ecosystem of Earth? Miri?
Connection established. Professor C.K. Varshney, eminent environmentalist.
These blasts require a big thrust, and for that a huge amount of energy has to be given out as a big burst. And all this creates a local pollution, as well as there is a big thunderous noise, which really is very difficult for the biodiversity, particularly the mammals and birds and other animals, to really survive and to really remain normal. Though trees cannot move and cannot express their concern, but at the same time the animals and the other living organisms which dwell upon them do have a serious effect on them. You will also understand that when the blast takes place, there is a big burst of light also. Now, this is not a normal feature during the night, which means that photoperiodic effects on the plant as well as on the animals are there. But unfortunately, there are no serious studies to ascertain that. And as the number of such satellite shots are increasing, the amount of debris is also increasing, which is creating a huge problem to the civilian aircrafts, to the military aircrafts, and to other flying vehicles. In fact, it is a very serious issue even for the satellites, because they might strike and really get aborted much before they are able to accomplish the task for which they are designed.
Are there only negatives here? Professor Varshney himself offers a counter perspective.
It is impossible to visualize the Earth as a system unless we look at it from the space. And once we have the synoptic view, which gives us a holistic perspective, it is possible for us to assess the various dimensions of the Earth which are impossible to comprehend while we are really moving on the ground. I give you one example, that we have got large number of issues where we would like to understand the behavior of the animal. So if we have biologging is a system by which we tag an animal and trace and follow it in the natural circumstances without interfering with its activity. This is only possible when we are able to do satellite tracking. So these are some of the things So on one side, if there is a downside, then on the other many pluses also, which really are providing as a spin-off from these space programs. And it is for this reason we will find that now in every state there is a space research organization really to help the state in managing its natural resources.
Still, I wonder how space exploration helps unify India.
Incoming broadcast from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former President of India and a visionary space scientist.
You know, one of the major milestones, according to me, when you put nearly 250 transponders in the geosynchronous orbit, you are connecting the people through television, radio, various communications we are connecting, and also world is connected. What is important is when the space program advancing, it helps to connect the villages through education, communication, various issues.
How can youth harness the potential of space? Let's hear what Dr. Kalam had to say at the World Space Knowledge Platform at California Institute of Technology in 2009.
I have suggested that solar power satellite in geosynchronous orbit, about 40,000 kilometers, nearly 24 hours sun is shining. So I am saying push the solar power satellite. That means many nations join together. Huge solar power satellite they have to build. But that's possible because of launch vehicle capacity of India, China, USA, Japan and Europe. It is possible to build a space solar power system in the geosynchronous orbit. The technological research challenge, how to bring the power safely to the earth. That's what Indian youth should enter in a big way. And the world youth also should join. It's a youth work because it's something we are saying 40,000 kilometers above, safely you bring without damaging the people and their assets and supply to the world population. So this is the dream project.
What a vision. Seems curiosity has unified humans despite the artificial barriers of race, language, caste, class and nationality. Earth seems to have a bright future, but it's not Mars, my world. If only I could hitch a ride on India's next mission to the Red Planet and go home.
चलो दिलदार चलो चांद के पार चलो हम तैयार चलो
Oh dear, yet again sleeping with the radio on? Get up!
What?
Wake up!
I'm sleeping.
Go, get the milk from the dairy.
Oh, what an out of this world dream. Oh.